Today we're going to talk about function, not a function. The first thing I want you to do is we're going to put our foldable together. So you're going to fold your left side into that black line. Then you're going to do the same thing and fold the right side in to the black line. So you're folding to the center of your page. The next thing I want you to do is take your scissors and you're going to cut each one of these dotted lines to make little doors. So you're going to do that 6 times, creating 8 flaps or 8 doors. We're going to talk about each section of the functions and not functions. We have mapping diagrams, we have tables, and we have graphs. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the function part. And I'm going to have right here, I'm going to make it a little bigger so you can see. And it says, in order for a relation to be considered a function, each member of the domain is your x or the input, must be paired with only one member of the range, that is your y, that's your output. So make sure you write this down, and you might want to pause and be able to write this in your foldable. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is a mapping diagram. Now, some of you may have not seen this before, so you're going to have to write these in there. And this is when we're talking about functions, okay? So your mapping diagram, it looks like two little, most of the time you'll see they'll look like ovals. In this case, they kind of look like rounded rectangles. The first line is always your x. The second oval or the second rectangle in this case is your y. This is a function because for every x is paired with a different y. And if you look here, that's all I'm looking at is the lines coming from the x. Each one only has one line. As long as they have one line, it's considered a function. We really only care about our input at this point. All right? So that is the mapping diagram for functions. Let's go to the next one. This is a table. You guys, we've dealt with tables before. Again, this is a function because every x is paired with a different y. It's okay if the values in the range y repeat. So again, we're only looking at the x. Each x is different. In this case, since each x is different, then it is a function. I don't really care about the y's. They are allowed to repeat, just like what we said. All right, the last one with a graph. We use what we call the vertical line test, okay? And the vertical line test for a function, all you're going to do is you can take a ruler or any sort of straight edge, all right? And you lay this on the graph. Vertical means that there can only be one point going on each vertical line. So in this case, I have one point here. On my y line, again, I only have one point. And then when I scoot over on the number 2 line, I only have one point. This satisfies that vertical line test. So it is a function. Even though you guys see that it makes the parabola, it is all right as long as there's only one point on your vertical lines or the x lines. Okay? All right, let's talk about not functions. Not functions. If a member of the domain X input is paired with more than one value in the range, our Y, our output, then it is not a function. Remember, for every input, there can only be one output. So if there's more than one input, then it cannot be a function. All right, so let's start out. I'll hold this. You may, again, like I said, you may want to pause this so that you can write this in your foldable. All right, let's talk about these not functions. Mapping diagram. Same mapping diagram that we had on the left. The only difference now, the member of the domain X is paired with more than one member of the range Y. If you notice here, and I'm going to lay this a little, let me bend this back a little bit. If you notice, remember I told you in the mapping diagram for function, I can only have one line coming out of the X. In this case, this has two lines coming out of the x, and their y's, their output is different. So in this case, x is paired with a 10 and a 20. So he cannot be a function. He cannot be a function. All right, now let's talk about a table. With the table, a member of the domain x, which is your input, is paired with more than one member of the range y. X equals 4 is paired with 10 and 12. So notice, had I only had one 4, let me cover this up, then this 4, 8, 12 for my x's, then it would have been considered a function. Because I have two 4s, then I should have the same output. In this case, the output is 10 and 11. This cannot work. So this is not a function. All right? Let's go to the last one with our graphs. Again, we're going to look at that vertical line test. So when it does, if you look for this vertical line test, the reason it does not satisfy is because if I take my ruler, notice how many points do I have on the vertical line. In this case, I have 2. I'm only allowed to have 1. So it does not satisfy the vertical line test, so he is not a function. All right, you're going to glue this into your IMN on page 42. Then you're going to complete page 43. I have provided pictures. You can put in which mapping diagram, table, or graph goes on function, not a function on page 43.